I'll do the funny.
I'm gonna come.
Obama.
So there are a lot of grail guns out there. People consider them that for one reason or another, but some of them are just so obscure and hard to find that there's no
Right. The demand for a grail gun becomes the demand for the thing that you can't have becomes part of the gun's desirability.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the guns were sold on store shelves everywhere tomorrow, people would talk about the gun less.
Right.
Like, part of the desire for it is the fact that you can't have it.
Right.
And of course, you guys are probably all thinking, like, oh, they got an MP7. That's not true.
That's not true.
Maybe next time. But
no, but we were very lucky to get to play with this. This is an Ultimax 100. Mark III. And it's original. It's imported, Singaporean, and you got the mag too, right? It's not something we'd want to lose. Honestly, this is a gun that I didn't have much of a preconception of. I didn't really pay much attention to it. You did, though.
My only sort of preconception of them was the fact that, from the gun designers and stuff that I talked to and hang out with, we had all sort of come to the consensus that a lot of what this gun has going for it is more. Everybody touts it as being constant recoil, right? That's the thing about it. It's like Sullivan figured out constant recoil, and then after listening to the Stoner tapes and specifically the parts where he talks with Sullivan, or not Sullivan, but Ed Ezell, he talks to him about gun design in general. It seems pretty clear that they figured out constant recoil prior to Armalite, prior to Stoner Works' work at Armalite. Like, everybody sort of agreed that it existed with the.
Right, yeah.
Everybody agreed it existed in the Sturmgewehr, even. That it was pretty much figured out that it's just like sort of a bolt of a mass that's sufficient such that it bottoms out on a spring, and it bottoms out at a very consistent spot. Where the heavier your reciprocating mass, the more good it will be at averaging out its total overall travel. Whereas if you've got a light bolt, the amount of energy the piston can put into it can be a little bit more variable.
Right.
So it's just sort of a combination of factors in that regard, and it gets overly simplified, I think, down to like it's a really long spring, which isn't unfair.
Right.
But that was sort of my conception of this thing. And whenever I first held it and then did like my initial shooting with it, I was not thrilled. It just sort of felt like, yeah, whatever. And it's like a 20-pound 5.56. And so I was thinking like, yeah, well, like, no shit. It's going to not move much. It's a really heavy 5.56.
Right.
And, I disassembled it. I saw that, mechanically, in terms of like the actual end user, I felt like things were very well designed. In terms of the manufacturing designing, it kind of gave me an aneurysm conniption combination thing where I was very scared and didn't want to look at it anymore. But probably the most interesting thing about it, and we're kind of jumping the shark here, but the barrel change mechanism on this is like shockingly good. It's like scary good how good it is.
Why don't you show them?
So, first things first, we got to get our bolt back. And of course, this gun's got a sad ejection port cover.
Yeah, that was the one issue we had. It was failing to eject, and it was because this is supposed to be sprung upwards.
And its spring is just broken, it happens.
It's not a big deal, but as long as it was up, it was running fantastic.
And so it's really simple. So we've got a trigger here right in front of the bipod. I guess the one issue with this is from a standpoint of affordance. That seems like it would be really comfortable.
Right.
And probably there's a way that you could flick this while you're shooting and have something funny happen. But you pull that trigger, barrel rotates over to the left. I think because I had it laid over. Oh, it's hung up on the bipod. So you're not supposed to do this while it's on the bipod, surely. And there you have your barrel mechanism. So that works for quick change. I guess much like the M60, right? It's quick change, but it has the gas operating system on each barrel. That said, this really isn't a lot of mass for a gas operating system. I've heard people quibble back and forth with LMGs that have detachable barrels. Does it make sense for them to keep have your sight on that barrel still? I don't hate it, especially this gun coming of age in a time where they were about to start putting optics on everything.
Mm-hmm.
this would
It does
then
have a provision.
this would then cease to matter altogether. But specifically with this gun, if I was the one making it, I don't think I would have made the sights stay on the barrel if there was an easy way to do it. Right, there probably wasn't an easy way to accomplish that. That's why they did this. But because this isn't a pick rail, this is some like proprietary stupid shit. I would have liked to have seen the sight be integrated on the receiver, especially because you got your rear sight on the receiver anyway. Yeah. It's not like you're going to be boasting great accuracy because you've got.
Yeah, well, there's a non-insane thing to be said, right, in terms of the breadth of tolerance that might actually be better to have the sights on the barrel because it's chasing that impact that exists on the barrel.
Right.
So, I don't know.
I guess one other thing is that lets you zero to that barrel.
Exactly.
Which is actually
that's what I'm saying.
Slick.
That's what I'm saying.
Did you have windage and elevation? You have elevation. We'll set up.
Yeah.
Maybe. No, you there's windage and elevation. I think.
Well, I mean I think that's I think that's good.
I take back like 90% of my complaint there. Like that's pretty slick.
Yeah.
That you can zero an individual barrel. That's nice.
Yeah.
Sort of alleviates that issue.
Right. And so it's slightly, people would, we'd be remiss not to say that it's not reminiscent of the AUG.
Right.
It is. It is.
There's a pin.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
It was actually, so it wasn't getting caught on the bipod. It was the little trigger thing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah. That was holding you out before. But yeah, so pretty slick just overall. I think the carry handle's kind of dumb.
Yeah, the weird thing is I mean, so for center of gravity, I was carrying this thing around, walking around with this. I probably looked like an insane person.
Yeah.
Because my big gripe, especially with calling the carry handle on the AR-15 a carry handle, is it wasn't designed to be a carry handle, and it's so far away from the center of gravity of the rifle that if you carry it by it for any extended period of time, the front of that, because the gun's center of gravity isn't even close. This thing's center of gravity is dead on nailed, and I guess I didn't do it with a fully loaded drum. I bet in that case it's probably a little bit more awkward.
Right.
I imagine for their center of gravity,
close enough to the drum.
I imagine for their center of gravity calculations, they did it with a loaded standard mag rather than the drum. But that's what I would have done anyhow. But it's certainly comfortable. It works good. The weird thing is like for its stowage position, it
becomes more inconvenient.
It just does that.
Yeah.
And like it doesn't lock in here, so if you pick it up, then it snaps back up here. I'm not entirely sure.
Right.
Like it doesn't make it more storable. And I wouldn't hate to see a position over here where it locks for like I mean, this is better for a hip fire situation anyway, at least for me. But so I'm not entirely sure.
Well, what's way better for hip fire is the forward grip.
Yeah, and I will say, shooting it off the shoulder, that forward grip fucks pretty darn hard.
Yeah. No, and the bipod, it has a great traverse.
Oh my god, it's bipod I was geeking about.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Prior to having it on the bipod, I had some negative things to say about the rifle. That bipod design is really slick, though.
Yeah. So you fold it by pulling on the feet itself, which is slick.
Yep.
And then each foot is independently adjustable, height adjustable, pretty granularly.
It's pretty granular. I'm not a huge fan of exactly how that adjustment works, but
yeah,
I like the ones that have like a clip lever you can clip.
Yeah. I know what you're saying, but it's not bad.
Yeah, it's absolutely workable. It's better than a lot of other bipods.
Right.
Like ones that are screw adjustable is horrible.
And so in terms of takedown, it's not very intuitive.
It's a lot less intuitive than like if you compare this to like because this gun's contemporaries in terms of being mag-fed 5.56 LMG. I guess you can narrow it further by saying with a quick change barrel, and that's really what like the Colt LMG that's AR-15 based lacks, the M27 AAR lacks. Of course,
right.
There are quick change AR-15 barrel systems that it would be really cool to see a modern Colt LMG with.
Right.
But I'm to some extent I am of the same mind as Chris from Small Arms Solutions, where the reason that those guns have never really taken off is by the time you have a machine gun and you have all that weight and you have the interchangeable barrel system, why wouldn't you make it belt fed?
Right.
That for civilians, I agree, mag fed kind of makes more sense because the logistics of belt fed is increased. But for a military, when Uncle Sam pays for it, who gives a fuck?
Right. So anyway, so what we do, first we pull this pin out, then the stock goes down, and then we push on this, and it releases a little latch that that falls out the bottom, which is cute. Is this just change your recoil spring, and it's just out. That's it.
And you can certainly see, they were desperate to get the mass of this up which I think is like a sort of a core tenet in the fascinating interviews that InRange TV did with Sullivan, who designed this gun as well as did a lot of work on the AR-15 and did the Mini 14 as well. He talks about that when it comes to getting very smooth recoil impulse, specifically in AR-15s, you need the mass to go up. And he was confused why competition shooters always get the mass down.
Right.
I think the thing that he wasn't factoring in is competition shooters also undergas their rifle to the point it barely does.
Right.
And then rely on a lot of well-sealed gas system, and it's easier to tune a well-sealed system.
Yeah.
For
than a military
having a lighter recoil mass. Meanwhile, for a military system, you can't always just assume that your gun's clean and slick and perfect and there's no sand or obstructions inside of it. So they have to overgas it. By the time you've introduced that extra energy into the system, having more mass there to sort of average it out, I think helps you with your constant recoil, plus having a somewhat comically large recoil spring.
Right. And so, to kind of say that concisely, when you need to put in a large amount of energy for reliability purposes, and you have the large amount of mass, it's more about just getting it started.
Yep.
Because once it's started, it's going to finish.
Yep.
Like, more mass, it's just like a flywheel. The bigger the flywheel, the longer it'll carry the energy. So that's why that kind of works out this way. You can operate in a wider range of circumstances when you have begun moving a more massive object.
Yep.
So that's pretty slick. And as we can see, it's an AR-18 bolt.
Yep.
Like, it is. And it's pretty simple in how it functions. When it locks up, of course, it just has a little bit more, compared to a regular AR-18, in full lock, there's just that additional travel, which is when the firing pin hits home. Honestly, really slick. And what I also like here is that the sear surface is a serviceable part.
Yep.
You can remove...
That's a really good idea, because
Yeah.
I think it's specifically 249s. I don't know if it's the sear on the trigger group that
Right.
breaks or off of the bolt, but it being an FN product, it's probably both. Those can lead to the guns running away, at which point, like, the remedial thing is you open the top cover and hope it stops feeding. So,
But with this, it's serviceable, inspectable, and replaceable when it needs to be replaced.
which is smart.
And 2 points of contact, pretty damn good. Damn good.
That's one of those things where like the Sant Exupéry test that we talked about.
Right.
Like, designer knows he's achieved perfection not when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. They did add something there, but I don't think their addition there isn't offensive. It's not like you can take that away and not have lost something.
That's really slick. The one issue I have with this takedown, though, is when we were just messing with it, I actually did. When you first look at it, you think, oh, that's a foul, and you start pulling on this, right, with the stock on, and you're like, what the fuck? And then this comes out. And then when you finally get this thing open, it's going to want to shoot out at you because you're not ready for it.
Can you get the bolt back whenever the Douglas is hanging down there?
Yep. Yeah, so...
I wonder what bad things that does for the gun when you shoot it like that. It's probably not right, but...
Yeah, no, but so... That's not ideal. I think there was probably a way they could have incorporated the hinge into that. But, and yeah, there's a lot of juice behind that spring when it's cocked back. So if you then figured out to take the pin out after you had done all that, it's gonna give you an enjoyment. But the other thing that we'd be remiss not to mention is the mag catch.
Yep.
Right. It goes with the AR style button, and I think that was a mistake because it's really gritty. Levering that all the way over to these two locking pins.
Like the two locking pins that are each pinned to this bar. So to give them float, that's smart, because I bet otherwise it binds up horribly.
Yeah, but it still binds up.
Right. And the reason they would chase a design like that is because if they were to make this thing take regular Stanags on modified Stanags, the magwell would need to stick down significantly further on the gun.
Right. Which means then your drums look stupid.
Your drums then need a tower. And like storing a drum like that isn't bad, right? That would fit in a pouch the same diameter as the drum. Having the tower stick off of it makes it unstorable. It makes the drum much more liable to get damaged and dropped and run into things, and especially when it's hanging off of your gear, it becomes sort of unusable. So making that change was really good. That said, it then means that regular old Stanags won't work in it.
Right. You do have to, so it's two drills, which you can see right here, 2 holes in the side of the magazine. And that's what they would do.
You can convert Stanags.
You can convert Stanags easy, and I'm sure, if you were adopting these, you'd probably do that to all your mags.
Right.
But it's a point. It's not a real point against it because it was a good decision to shorten the mag well.
It was. However, the thing that I would argue is for guns that you're going to shoot off of the bipod like this, like look at the slot that they've got in the back of this magazine.
Yeah.
That Stanags slot up inside of there. Right. The drum mags don't need to.
Right. But it does anyway.
But with Stanags, you still have the downside of the full-length mag where that mag has to get all the way out of that slot before it's out of the gun. When you're shooting this prone, 30-round mag is not getting out of, 30-round mag won't fit out of the bottom of that gun when you're shooting it prone, unless you have the bipod all the way up, maybe.
It does give you space in the front, though, so you can kind of rotate it out.
Sort of. I mean, once it's out of the track, at least.
Here, let's... Well, it doesn't have to... It's not tracked, so it... it can slide...
But...
The Stanags are...
Are they not?
No. So it would be able... So you'd be able to kind of do this.
Yeah.
So it's...
It gets out easy. The point that I was trying to make was, with the AK style rock and roll thing, it's easy to get maxed out whenever you're prone. But you can still do it with this pretty well.
Yeah. So and you can see they made an angle cut there, I think, to facilitate that.
Yeah.
So pretty well thought out, and I mean that's what you would expect from a late stoner design, really.
And so I guess part of the reason that actually a kick forward magazine like a Rock and Lock magazine wouldn't be great is because this has an integral pistol grip, and it's nice to be able to have a hand on that if this was being crew served for some reason, it would be nice if the shooter didn't have to change anything.
Right. I will say I love the sight picture.
So on the sight picture, it's specifically contrasted with the Uzi and the Thompson, really. Like, peep sights on machine guns usually is like you have to hold onto that sight picture for dear life, because when you've lost it, you're not finding it again. Shooting this thing, especially off the bipod, but even off the shoulder, you don't lose that sight picture. It stays with you the whole time.
No, the thing just chills while you're firing.
It's shockingly reminiscent of shooting something with a red dot. It's so, it just stays there. It's not trying to leave.
So I've shot a A2 LMG, and it felt just like this.
Yeah.
It felt just like this. And it almost feels, in terms of the actual impulsive part to your body, it feels kind of like 9mm subgunny.
Yeah.
But it's a million pounds. That's really why.
It is a really heavy gun, and so
there's nothing magical about it.
Right. What I would really like to do at some point is a comparison where we can compare Ultimax to the Colt LMG to the Colt IAR to the HK IAR to there's at least a couple more. The Stoner 63 is really what I want to compare this to, is the Stoner 63.
Right.
The Stoner 63 certainly predates it, but was certainly sort of conceptually at some rate, at least in the LMG configuration, was conceptually similar to this.
Right. So yeah, it's fascinating, and it's pretty good. I mean, I'm going to be honest, the way you can just sit there and lay into a target is kind of
nice.
I mean, you'll hear us saying in the shooting video where I dump 50 rounds and I go, that's bullshit. Yeah. That's just it, and I don't mean bad. I mean that's cheating. Yep. But the thing is, people will say, oh, you can shoot this one-handed and it doesn't move. That's bullshit.
That's there's videos of people who are they'll take it out of their shoulder with the one hand, and the constant recoil keeps the muzzle up. That looks cool. And I'm sure, even I, before having a lot of machine gun experience, was fooled into thinking that means something good. That translates to nothing when you're actually shooting the gun, because you do still have to hold up the front end of the gun with your hand. It's not like it hovers.
And also, if you watch the people who do it, I've seen one guy has a video of him shooting it, where he actually starts shooting it out there, and you'll see the exact same, the rhythm that we talk about.
Once it establishes itself.
Yeah, right? So the gun, wilds for a second, and then it stays chill, because you kind of are you've reached a rhythm.
Right.
But then, we've been talking about the rhythm before. When are you able to just stay on the target and keep both eyes open? There is no rhythm on this one. You pull the trigger, and bullets are happening, and your eyes are open, and it's hitting.
The trigger could be smoother, I guess, from a standpoint of the trigger is still pretty heavy. It's probably about 10 pounds.
Yeah.
And this thing has at least it's not bad slurp, but it does have, especially off the bipod, I noticed it, even pulling it into my shoulder, that it slurps, and that first round may dip a little bit.
Let's see, huh? Man, that's really small, though. The front sight didn't move.
At 40, 50 yards, it's enough to throw you off by an inch or two.
Yeah. A few, right? Like at 100 yards, maybe a foot for the first shot. But then after that, the trigger's like a switch, is what I'd call it. Right. You turn the gun on, and then it's spitting bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this thing, Jesus, when we were at
As
the
far
range,
as
it
as
just
far as
spit
as
brass.
far as movie machine guns from a standpoint of like you can paint with them,
Yeah.
I think this is, of the machine guns I've ever shot, this is the most you could like sign your name at 100 yards on the car with.
100%, for sure. Okay, so why don't you talk a little bit about the overall approach to manufacturing, because that's where it's kind of a mixed bag.
Right. So there's sort of an overuse, I'd say, of screws on this.
Yeah.
I thought we left screws behind with John Browning, and they didn't know how to make guns yet. There's screws that hold on just the dust port cover. Those screws are threaded into a piece of metal that's welded onto the side of the receiver. Like, it's tapped holes in two pieces of sheet metal that are welded together. That's kind of a head scratch. Like, certainly there had to have been a more elegant way to do that, even if it's just pinned on.
Right.
There's screws that hold the fire control group on. Screws holding furniture on I'm not going to complain about because the handguard doesn't need to come out. Taking the fire control group off is something eventually you will have to do. So that's sort of weird. So much of this gun is welded together.
Right.
The sort of trunnions welded in, handguard caps welded on. There's welds all over this gun. I know, I'm pretty sure Stoner, I think it was Stoner, talked about at one point in his interviews that he didn't like welding. I think I'm generally in his camp, where it seems like Stoner wanted to make everything out of aluminum. It seems like Sullivan, in his approach to this gun, wanted everything to be welded together.
Right.
It's much more AR-18 in its approach to existing, where there's a lot of welds all over this thing. But it works. I'm certainly not detracting from the fact that it works, just from a standpoint of it's sort of orcish build quality.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be making these.
And when it comes to serial production, at a time when labor was cheap, it's not bad.
Right. At
a time where labor, especially skilled labor for welders, is not cheap, this gun wouldn't be cheap to make, and some of these welds you're not getting a robot in to do.
No.
It certainly can be simplified and adapted. I believe Surefire has a version of this that's now running on what looked to me like aluminum receivers, but maybe it is still steel, but just massively simplified to the point that it looks to me like maybe there's some extrusions in there even.
Right.
So this concept absolutely can be simplified, and in fact Surefire is already working on that.
Right.
So it's certainly not a dead concept by any means. Just the thing that I think will keep this from ever really catching on is the fact that the military has adopted their LMG, or at least the Marines have, and it's been the IAR. If they're going to go mag-fed, they're probably going to go that direction more than they are going to go this sort of direction. And then even with this modernized, right? They're going to stick with their sort of parts and manual of arms compatibility with the rifles if they're going to do mag-fed LMG. And again, that's already a pretty big if, because having that belt-fed capability I think is nice. One thing about this, we shot hundreds of rounds through this drum, fed perfectly. Drum didn't have any problems, but drum mags are more liable to getting dirt and grime in them and then having trouble. They are more fragile. They're harder to carry on your person. Like, belts are probably the easiest way to carry around a large amount of ammo.
I will say this mag was very easy to load and didn't give us any trouble.
Yep, even without a mag loading tool, I'm sure of which one exists.
Yeah.
It is certainly a very well-designed drum. I put it right up there with the Romanian, Russian top-loading AK drums. They're good.
Yep, it was all good. So yeah, guys, Ultimax. Here's the thing. We both agree this is good.
Yep.
We both agree it's almost bullshit to shoot.
Yep.
Does it deserve its storied reputation?
Depending on who you get your stories from, I think probably no.
The whole hovering thing, that's nonsense.
It's like a party gimmick trick, right? Because people, I've seen people do that with Thompsons, and that doesn't mean that Thompsons are controllable.
Yeah, so it's a really cool gun, really interesting, innovative, not really. It's just a well-made, heavy 5.56 open bolt light machine gun, and I think that it
shoots good.
If anything, it's proof that that's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for the moment. We will catch you next time, and until then, I guess whine at us in the. I don't know what you're gonna whine about this time. Whatever. That kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Oh. It only has one setting.
was a live one, interestingly. That's really, really smooth.
Yeah. God, that's so good.
That's really smooth. That's really, really easy to shoot.
My turn. God, that's like fucked up how easy that is. Oh, double.
Interesting. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Probably just the... Did it again, it's just not ejecting.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be a little weak or something.
I'll do the funny. Bro, that's like bullshit.
It's really smooth.
That's like...
It's pretty smooth.
That's fucked up.
We need to get the Colt LMG.
Yeah.
Once you figure out how to hold, that's pretty incredible. Like you definitely do have to pull down, right? I've heard stories that this thing just shoots itself in one-handed and all that. It's not that.
That's bullshit.
It definitely doesn't do that.
I've tried that and it's bullshit.
But it's pretty, you know, like you don't have to pull down hard, just some.
Yeah.
It's not. I wouldn't call it MP5 smooth, but it's for 5.56. It's the smoothest I've done.
I've shot a Colt LMG and it feels like that.
Yeah.
It's so good. And look at the way the receiver jump is.
Yeah. Let me get a video of that.
Compared to the Thompson, which swoops the whole gun up and over. That's a little click.
And that can't just be a question, because I know people will be saying, like, yeah, that's just a question of the mass, because this one weighs more. But this is heavier than a Thompson. Sure.
It is heavier.
Maybe like 5 to 7 pounds heavier. But
when the bolt is all the way back, it's not behind
right.
the center of gravity. It's in line with it. And then, it certainly moves a little bit, but it doesn't do this whoop thing.
Once you figure out how to hold, that's pretty incredible.